Hello, Norwich. Thanks for Tom for the little invitation to come out and speak. Like you said, I'd like to do a little talk about the work that we do at the Government Digital Service, about a thing that we wrote called the Government Service Design Manual, and about how accessibility fits in with all of the different work that we're doing. For those of you who can't see, a colleague of mine this afternoon, while I was getting on the train, tweeted this. I don't know who he was talking to, and I really want to talk to him about it tomorrow. But he said, what's the opposite of good work? And the answer to that was government. And that is what most people's perception of what the government is and what they can do. Hopefully, we're increasingly able to prove that that's not always the way it has to be. Like I said, I work for the Government Digital Service. We're a fairly recently formed government department. We're part of the Cabinet Office, so we sit right at the heart of government, and we're part of a thing called the Efficiency and Reform Group. So we were set up to provide sort of a dedicated technology team in government, so pretty much the opposite of the last 20 years or so of outsourcing everything. We were formed because of this lady, who's Martha Lane Fox. So in 2010, for the last government, in her role as the UK government's digital champion, Martha wrote a report that urged for revolution, not evolution, in how government approached its digital sort of estate. So she wrote sort of a 4-page report, which is quite rare in government. They're usually 50-page things that just get buried and forgotten about forever. Hers came with 4 parts. She recommended that we set up some sort of in-house capability to do digital things across government, that we simplified how we published things. So we had thousands of different websites and thousands of different applications. She said we should publish that through one platform. We should improve the transactions that government provides, so how you pay your tax, how you book prison visits, whatever it might be. And then we should provide APIs for all of that data. So if you wanted to build a service yourself because you think we've done a terrible job, like, you should be able to do that really simply. So I am the new head of accessibility for the Government Digital Service. I was the accessibility lead until last week, and I got promoted. So I think I'm doing all right. I'm a part developer, sort of part evangelist, occasional big stick to go around to people who still don't really get it. Most importantly, I'm a civil servant, despite the tattoos and scare ministers regularly. So I'm not a contractor, I'm a member of Her Majesty's government. I'm paid by the taxpayer to fix accessibility across government and to work on gov.uk. I started doing that in 2011 after a guy by the name of Tom Loosemore emailed me, asked for an egoless code monkey to come and work for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, March 2011, I'm still there. So we built a prototype in the open that we could put in front of the Minister for the Cabinet Office, who's a guy called Francis Maude, and he decided to run with the recommendations in Martha's report and let us set up a government department so we could build what became this, which is gov.uk. Gov.uk replaced DirectGov and BusinessLink as sort of the main online presence of Her Majesty's government. And in the year since it's been live, we've replaced the 24 separate ministerial websites, sites for the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, plus 102 of 308 arm's-length body websites. We're working on transitioning the other 200 and something sites at the moment. So once that's done, pretty much every major part that government published separately will all be rolled into one platform. We've already closed around 1,700 domains, I think, since we started doing this. And we've been redirecting the old content to either the new URLs for it on gov.uk or an archived version that we host on the National Archives site, so we're not breaking the web while we transition all of this stuff. It's one consistent platform with one user experience. There are no apps. We just publish one responsive website, so we don't need to spend taxpayers' money on a separate mobile site. We focused on accessibility throughout it, because as government, we're expected to run services that are accessible, or we can have our domains revoked by the organization that we get them from. That wouldn't be ideal if they turned that off. And it hasn't really happened in the past where they've closed one because it wasn't accessible enough. But part of my new job is to give that some more teeth. So if people don't build things well enough, we will turn them off. Just quite exciting. So yeah, for the first time, I think, we have a simple page on gov.uk that explains how the government works, because it's hugely confusing. I've worked there for 2.5 years now. No idea what goes on in most of it. So yeah, we have one page that explains it, and it's all consistently designed, consistently laid out. So in the first year of gov.uk, for those of you who haven't seen it, don't know sort of the size of it, we had 427 million visits and 1.2 billion page views. That's roughly 1 million visits a day. I think the highest was 2. And that's a lot of people to annoy if you mess things up. And as we move more content onto the platform, it's only going to get busier. So if you're talking about a service of that scale, like, how do you make that work for everyone? I think the population of the UK was roughly 63 million in 2011. We realistically have to support every adult in the country, plus visiting foreign nationals for things like visas. So if you're talking roughly 40 to 50 million people who have to use this thing at least once a year. So how do you do that without excluding people? We started with a set of principles, which is the thing we call our design principles. Shared principles are always really good because they focus everyone on the same goals. So when we started, we came up with this list of 10 things. Start with needs, like user needs, not the needs of government. Do less, design with data, a bunch of them. 4 and 6 are sort of most primarily used by me. Number 4 is a thing we call do the hard work to make it simple. So we should be spending lots of time like iterating problems until we get to the simplest solution. We shouldn't just give users some horribly complicated thing and expect them to muddle through. Number 6 is build for inclusion, although we're changing that soon. Sir Tim Berners-Lee in the opening ceremony of the Olympics tweeted as part of his little bit, and he said a thing that I really like, which is, this is for everyone. I like it so much I'm stealing it. So if you're watching, Sir Tim, thanks. So as part of the work that we did, we came up with this thing, which is the Digital by Default Service Standard, which is a collection of things that service providers have to follow so that we will allow them to operate a service on gov.uk. We as the government committed to making sure anything new that we build or that we redesign has to meet this service standard, otherwise we won't let them launch it. And the criteria for that are all based on this document, which is an online thing called the Government Service Design Manual. As we've been building gov.uk, we've been writing this, which is a collection of guidance for teams who want to build their services the same way that we built gov.uk. So there's content in there for designers, for writers, developers, managers, architects, DevOps people, like pretty much everybody from every level who have to sort of build digital services. It comes into force in April next year, and once it's a live service, it sets the expectations that we have as a department of what a good service needs to look like to be allowed to operate. So if you don't meet this standard and you want to build something for government, we won't let you launch it. which I think, again, is one of the first times things like making sure your services are accessible has been enforced on a scale of sort of the kind of work that we're doing. Accessibility sort of has to be a big part of the work that we do because, you know, it has to work for everyone who's expected to interact with it, which is pretty much every adult in the country. So it covers a bunch of content like a user-centered design, like accessibility, things like creating accessible PDFs, because God knows government needs to publish more of those. All the way through to writing copy for transactions. So like really detailed micro things that we wanted to document. So if you start with the design principles and then you follow the service standard, like where do you go from there if you want to build things for government? Empathy is a good place to start as far as I'm concerned. It's not just about helping the disabled. We have to consider things like literacy levels and education levels, age, disability is part of it, sure, but empathy is a great tool for building products. If you can put yourself in someone else's shoes while you're designing something or you're building something, it gives you sort of a great leveler to make those designs and those products better. It's not solely about empathy because as the government, we are expected to follow the law. So it's the law in this country because of the Equality Act that you shouldn't discriminate against people. One of those discriminations is you shouldn't discriminate against disability. So I'm going to be honest, I really don't care about the law. That's not why I do what I do. I care about our users. So they're not like a random group of disabled users. Like it's not just a random focus group that we use all the time. You know, the disabled users that we have are our relatives, our friends, the people in our communities, and sort of more important than that, they're taxpayers, so they deserve a better deal. We should be able to help everyone by simplifying how we build these services. It's not about sort of disability for me, it's about fairness. So this doesn't really help you if you can't see, but this is a format that we have on the site, a thing that we call a guide. It's like long form content built in multiple parts. This is the old design for it. We have this sort of parts-based navigation on the left of the page, nice big text, like nice big heading, maybe relevant links over on the right-hand side. We thought that was probably good enough, so we launched it. We did some more user testing after it had been live for a while. Turns out, even though we made the navigation on the left-hand side to go between the parts huge, just nobody ever saw it. So it was just completely wasted. So we relaunched it with a new design where we minimized all of that, we simplified it, we made it a bit more clear. And we didn't really change much else, but if you put the two things side by side, the difference between the old version and the new version is quite stark, really. I think the new one just feels a bit more right. There's loads more white space, it's a bit clearer. So, like all of the products that we build, because we have multiple products and multiple teams, multiple departments all across government trying to build things for this. Every single one of them that is going on gov.uk starts really small. We'll make like a minimum viable product. We'll iterate that, we'll test it. So we can back up the assumptions that we had about those products with data. We work across a bunch of different projects too. So we publish through the gov.uk platform, but we also published digital strategies for each of the departments so they could say how they were going to engage with their users. We have the service standard and the service manual, so we can sort of give best practices and guidance for how we want people to build things. We have a project called Assisted Digital, which is set up to help the 18% or so of the population who aren't online for whatever reason. That's set up to help them use the digital channels. And then we're running a thing called exemplar projects at the moment, where we're redesigning and rebuilding the top 600 transactions in the country. So the most used things that you as citizens have to interact with. Accessibility goes through every piece of that work. But if there's one thing that you wanted to say, like this is the thing that makes it more accessible than anything else, it's this. We deliberately chose to rewrite every piece of content that we were publishing because nobody understands it. Like, hands up, a little show of hands. If you've ever gotten any communication from the government that you really struggled to understand. Yeah, me too. Tax, hate it. So yeah, we rewrote every piece of content that we moved on to gov.uk. Sounding like the government just wasn't working. So we stopped it. Well-written content is the most important thing that you can use to base your sort of redesigns on or your products on. We ditched the jargon. We stopped people's like writing legalese. We have a team in the Cabinet Office right now working on actually rewording legal language to make that more clear and more understandable. So even though as government we have to publish certain things in certain ways because they like pertain to actual laws, we can't simplify them because if we do we run the risk of being sued. We've gotten around that by setting up a team to rewrite what it means to say technical legal things as the government. So we still get to rewrite it. But yeah, great typography will help. If you have to do one thing to make your things more accessible, rewrite them. Like, use simpler, clearer language. We recently won a thing called a D&AD yellow and black pencil. They're like hugely prestigious design and advertising awards. I think very rarely people get black pencils for anything. Apple just won one for 20 years or so of really nice design work. Governments never won them for anything, and for some reason they decided to hand one to us as well as a yellow pencil because of the quality of our writing. Get that right and you're golden. And it really annoys ad agencies that government won it, which is it's always good. So there's a guy called Oliver Reichenstein who wrote this in 2006, which makes me feel older than I am. I still believe every word of it. Like, web design is 95% typography. If you can simplify how you present words on a page, that helps people's understanding of it. We have a deliberately limited range of styling on the site. We use lots of white space. We use one typeface, which is based on the road signs that you see around the country. We use really limited amounts of bold. We use no italics because, you know, dyslexics sometimes have a problem reading them. We have really limited color palettes. And if you combine sort of those sorts of things with better writing, that gives you a really solid foundation to build products on. I really like consistency. Consistency is great. It means you can learn a behavior once and then apply it somewhere else while you're doing the same thing. Consistent navigation, consistent link behaviors, heading structures, form layouts, like all of this stuff, the more consistency you can build into it, sort of the easier you've made it for someone to use that thing. You used to know, or you used to have to know, 24 completely separately structured websites to understand what government departments were doing. To find out what the government was doing about Afghanistan meant checking 11 different websites, all of which had their own IA, their own content, their own hosting, their own everything. A lot of that, you had to know the structure of government to even know which sites you should be looking at in the first place. Now it's in one place, it's on one page, and it looks and behaves the same as the rest of gov.uk. So hopefully, if you want to know, it should be clearer and simpler to find that out. If you have, say, resistant teams, Like, for me, it's quite easy to say this. Like, I'm the head of accessibility for the GDS. I get to bully people quite a lot in my job if they don't want to get on board. If you don't have that luxury, just start with small changes. If you have like a wrapper div around the main area of your content, replace it with a main element. Write better skip links. Make your focus indicators visible. If you have tables on your site to describe data, make them better. Sort out your color contrast. Write cleaner HTML. So assistive technology has less work to do to work out what you're doing. Like, all of these things, like, soon add up if you're talking about, like, trying to make these things more usable. If you have write access to the code, that's perfect. Just do it. Don't ask for permission. Don't set up committees to go off and make the accessible thing. Just start fixing stuff. That's basically how we started making gov.uk accessible. I did it. I didn't want a committee. Lots of things that you do won't even be visible. So if you think you need sign-off from someone who said, oh, we can't possibly make this change over here because the client would hate that, and no, that's all terrible. Most of this stuff, like, if you're not using assistive technology, you won't even notice. So just get it done. If that doesn't work, tell them that even organizations as big and slow and ugly as the government are doing it well now. That's good. This is a thing like WebAIM, thing that Bernie was talking about. A guy called Jared Smith is a saint, and he deserves huge amounts of money and fame and everything nice. He's great, and he's a really good educator. He came up with this a few weeks ago, which is his hierarchy for motivating accessibility change. His guilt is way down at the bottom. Guilt's a horrible motivator. Like, if you just want to shame people because their website isn't great, that's not really going to inspire them to get it done. Inspiration's a far better tool to affect change. So, motivation sort of comes from inspiring people to get involved in this stuff. I don't personally need all of the accessibility features that I push for, not yet at least. But I'm in a really privileged position of being able to fundamentally change things on a national level for people who do need them. So hopefully, if we can do it as the UK government, hopefully that work will inspire someone to make their thing more inclusive too. If you don't know where to start, another one from Jared, he has these 10 easy accessibility tips. There you go. Bernie approved. Those are all really, really simple things that you can do. Most of them will take you literally seconds to do. And they'll all make somebody else's life like a lot easier if they have to interact with your products. As far as what we're doing next, we're in the process of reworking the service manual so it's a bit more usable. It's a bit of a dog's dinner right now. Finding things in it is quite hard. So we're trying to make that a lot easier, trying to make clearer checklists for how you implement things. I'm currently working to try and fix accessibility across the government, so unifying all of the different departments so we're all using the same guidelines and trying to do similar testing so we're not duplicating effort and we're making everything more sane. We'll be blogging more, sharing more code. We are at the beginning of the journey to fix the transactions in the country. So we'll be learning quite a lot about that, I should imagine, especially when we start digging into more stuff with HMRC around tax and scary things. We're also aiming to work out how we better support our deaf users. So we're looking at things like BSL content, video relays, whatever's most appropriate, really. But for all of this stuff, we really need your feedback. Tell us what we've screwed up. Tell us what you like. Tell us what's most important to you that we're not already doing so we can make it better for everyone. Thanks.